Welcome back. So somebody asked me a question that I've kind of danced around. I think the answer, I may have answered it to some extent in a previous video, but I'm going to do this video on why I chose tanker and should you choose tanker over reefer or flatbed, and are there advantages or disadvantages? Um, and I know I talked about a little bit about tanker in the about me video and stuff like that, but just to give you an idea, I basically I chose tanker because it seemed like a bit of a challenge. Seemed like there was a little bit more to it. If you ever read the commercial driver's manual, the book that you have to take the written portion of the test, when you do the tanker endorsement portion, which everybody that comes to Prime is going to have to take the tanker endorsement. And I know we've talked about that before, because even in flatbed or in reefer, you're going to haul totes, which are those large plastic crates. They're totes. They're plastic containers, plastic tanks that are enclosed in a metal cage. Those are large enough that if you haul those, and especially if you haul an entire trailer full, the DOT requires you to have a tanker endorsement to haul those. And we'll haul those on flatbed, and we'll haul them in the back of a reefer van. So you're going to have to take that tanker endorsement test. And one of the things they mention in there is because of the movement of the liquid, it's one of the more challenging things to drive is a tanker. And that just kind of appealed to me. As I mentioned before, I came to Prime with some professional driving experience. Prime considered me not having any professional driving experience. Is what it is, but I had driven school bus and charter bus and public transit before, had a Class B CDL, but I didn't have any problem getting my Class B CDL. And just, it sounded like a challenge. I thought I was up for it, and so that's why I went tanker. But the question that I get asked occasionally, and this was a question that was asked recently, is, is it advantageous to lease and tanker? And it kind of made me think, well, geez, there's that question of, can you make money in tanker? Can you make money in reefer? Can you make money in flatbed? And this comes back to, it's up to you. What I do is very beneficial for where I live. Now, when I lived in Michigan, it was good. Moving to, and if you're not familiar with the channel, I do a regional dedicated out of Decatur, Indiana. After doing this for 3 months, I moved my family to just outside of Decatur, Indiana. It's just outside of Fort Wayne. And it's excellent for that. And I get to go home basically more or less every single day. So, the question of tanker, reefer, or flatbed similarly is, where do you live? If you live in California, tanker's not going to work out for you because we do not have the freight that will be able to get you home. And let me tell you something. Prime has heard thousands of times, I don't care how often I get home. I don't need to get home. It doesn't matter to me. And 2 weeks into training, something happens back home with a friend, a family member, or whatever, and somebody who is training in tanker wants a ride home, and they have to accommodate that person. And because of that, Prime's policy is simply, we have a hiring area for tanker, or we have a hiring area for flatbed, or we have a hiring area for reefer. And they're not going to go outside of that area. Florida is a good example where we have a lot of freight around Savannah, Georgia, but Prime does not hire for tanker out of Florida. So Savannah's not that far, and you can say if you lived in, say, Jacksonville, Savannah is not that far for me to go. Doesn't matter. Prime's not going to hire out of Florida. Now, if you want specifics on where Prime hires for each division, you're going to need to talk to a recruiter, because I know some of the areas that Prime will hire for, but I do not know all of them for each division. So the area that you live has a lot to do with what division makes the most sense for you. Secondly, once you've figured out what division you want to work in and what division Prime will hire you for, then I get that same question: can I make money in tanker versus reefer? Here's the bottom line. If you talk to someone who works in the office at Prime and they get weekly averages, they'll take every company truck in reefer, flatbed, tanker, and intermodal even. Every lease truck in reefer, flatbed, tanker, intermodal. And they have a weekly average for how much each truck generates in revenue. Week to week, tanker may make more, reefer may make more, flatbed may make more. And that will change depending on various things. One of the things you'll hear is, well, reefer runs a lot more miles than tanker does. Well, all you have to do is look at the mileage pay, and tanker pays more per mile. And that's one of the ways that they compensate. The rates on the lease side are set differently because we don't run as many miles as they do in reefer. For that standpoint, for me, if I were a over-the-road driver, I look at it as, do I want to have to run 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 miles as a team truck to generate the same revenue, running 2,500 miles, 3,000 miles in a tanker truck? And I'm just throwing out numbers. I'm just saying you can generate the same type of revenue not running as many miles, just because the rates are set differently by the sales staff. So when the question comes up, does it make sense? Can you make money? What pays more? Well, first of all, the thing that's going to pay the most is training. Training on the TNT side, trainer and trainee, you're going to run as a team truck. So team driving or training in the TNT side is going to pay the most, flat out. And when you're crisscrossing the country on a reefer truck going from Florida to Seattle to Maine, back down to Los Angeles, as a team truck, you're going to make a lot of money doing that. There is absolutely no doubt about it. As a solo operator, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. All the trucks, and there are, of course, variables. There are weeks when there's going to be a reefer guy who just kills it, has an unbelievable week. There's going to be a week where that same guy makes not much, makes a few $100s. Same thing on the tanker side is going to happen. There's going to be a week where several $1,000s for a tanker guy. And then maybe a week or two later, same guy's not going to make as much. That's part of what leasing is, though. It's the variation in pay week to week. But when you average things out, they're all going to pay roughly the same. On the solo side, team truck, certainly you have the potential for more money. But really, I think the biggest variable is going to be, where do you live? That's going to have the biggest influence on, if you live in Florida, or if you live in California, you're not going to be able to drive tanker no matter what. And you're not going to make any money driving tank. But you can drive reefer for Prime. So where you live is probably the biggest variable, 100% on how much money you can make. But if you live in an area where Prime's going to hire you for any division, say Chicago, it's all going to average out. And then it's up to you. It's how hard do you want to work? How hard do you want to run? Do you want to become a trainer? Do you want to team drive? That sort of thing. So as far as what division do you pick, what do you want to do? You know what reefer does? Hauls, for the most part, refrigerated food products. That's what, if you don't know what reefer stands for, reefer is a box trailer with a refrigerated unit on the front Most of the time they're hauling refrigerated goods, cooled goods. They do sometimes use those for non-refrigerated stuff, but they haul meat, produce, other things like that. You know what flatbed's going to do? You're going to have to be out there strapping, chaining, tarping, all that stuff, securing your load. In good weather and in bad weather, you're going to be responsible for that, whether it's steel, whether it's equipment, whether it's building materials. That's part of the job with flatbed, and I've shown you a lot about what tanker is all about. So what do you want to do? Where do you live? And you're going to earn, give or take, roughly the same amount of money. So like I said, I think it's what you want versus where you live that determines, for the most part, what division you should pick. Thanks so much for joining me. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something. Click on the link if you want to come to Prime. Takes you right to the application. You can also ask questions in the comments or send me an email. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.